how it was done. It will bring settlement, not just for the past, but for the future, in terms of the elections when we are moving this way. Now, I know that this kind of report requires goodwill. For us to move forward, we will require that goodwill. I am not quite sure why we've taken 4 months since 25th of November to even table this report here. I do not know whether that is consistent with goodwill. But I do know, having been in the first process, that we were beleaguered by absence of goodwill at certain stages. I want to really urge that if we are to go this way, there must be goodwill. I want to say that contrary to what some people think, this report is actually not inconsistent with the judgment that was issued by the High Court just a fortnight ago. Indeed, in that judgment, the judge correctly observed that issues like constitution of the panel is a political question that should be left to politicians under the political doctrines question. But the judge found it necessary to come to that judgment because the process was delaying. Had we started this immediately the report was out, we'd probably have forestalled that kind of decision. But there's nothing lost because the judge is saying, do this within 90 days. The report is recommending, let us do it within 90 days. It is possible for those 90 days to coincide if there's goodwill. Even if we didn't, if there was goodwill, it is possible for the two principals who initiated the process to have a situation where there's consensus and discussion in terms of the names that will be recommended, so that when the names come here for the IEBC commissioners, we do not end up in voting and confrontation as sometimes we are given to. Having said that, Madam Speaker, I want to say that there are areas that will require more careful navigation. It is not to say we don't adopt the report. As we adopt it, we will require more careful navigation. One of them is whether we require a referendum. My casual glance of the report suggests we will in 4 different areas. The second one is this thing of recommending a Senate of 7 years. That will require us to really re-examine a number of things. The third one is the idea of a staggered election. There's a host of reasons why the general election is held on the same day. And if we are to interfere with it, we have to navigate very carefully. Lastly, Madam Speaker, is the question of the leader of opposition and the office of the Chief Prime Cabinet Secretary. We will have to re-examine our structure of government because the report does not go that far. It does not say whether these officers are to be in this house and what role they are to play. That is left for us. So, Madam Speaker, I support with the caution that we need to start thinking more in terms of giving intention to the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member for Sigowet Soin, Honorable Justice.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very important report. First and foremost, Madam Speaker, I want to record that I'm in support of the report. I'm in support of the report, Madam Speaker, because when we are given the 9 legislative proposals, we should be in a position to cure at least 2 or 3 major issues that have always brought contention and polarization in this country. The one that comes to mind, Madam Speaker, is electoral justice. When shall we have it right in this country so that when our people go to elections, Madam Speaker, we do not resort to any other means to have our grievances sorted out apart from what is provided in the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I don't want to speak to all the issues. I want to single out 3 issues which I'll speak to. Madam Speaker, IEBC is an institution that we have constantly created and recreated in this country. But it has never provided us with the confidence that when we do elections, the elections are truly reliable and elections which represent the interest of the people. Madam Speaker, even if we do create another IEBC, and the systems, the structures, and the people in that institute what is right, Madam Speaker, this will be an exercise in futility. I want, Madam Speaker, that when those legislation brought, we look critically at the structure of IBC, and we look critically at the systems in IBC. Let us also look at the methodologies of doing elections in this country. And finally, Madam Speaker, we must have people of ethical high ground manning IBC. Madam Speaker, I'm opposed to this idea where the principals are given the honors to select members of the panel that will be leading us the right men and right women to man IBC. Madam Speaker, when I speak on this issue of Ward Development Fund, it reminds me of the belief of President Moy, the late President Moy, a long time ago, when he brought the idea of district focus for
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the NADCO report. Madam Speaker, the rationale behind collectively, devoid of party position and ideologies. Madam Speaker, I have skimmed through the report and a few issues pique my interest. Madam Speaker, the first issue is the entrenchment of the Ward Development Fund. Madam Speaker, it is about time that we ensure we give legitimacy to the office of the county assembly members, Madam Speaker, so that they can also have some sort of independence from the executive, Madam Speaker. We have seen oftentimes, Madam Speaker, a push and pull even in divide of resources. And most of the MCAs who sometimes find themselves on the wrong side in terms of being in good books with the executive at the county level find that they're not able to launch any projects for their people, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, these are people who have been elected by their various representatives to ensure that they cater and represent for their interests, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, the 2/3 gender rule is of concern to me, and it is worth noting that the leader of minority has pronounced himself that anything that will be discussed by the multi-sectoral working group in regard to the 2/3 gender rule and any recommendations in regard to the same will be adopted as part of the NADCO report. Madam Speaker, one of the issues that the NADCO report was the committee was supposed to resolve is the issue of giving effect to the 2/3 gender rule. Madam Speaker, only this House has the authority through Article 27(8) of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 to ensure that we have provided for legislation for giving effect of the 2/3 gender rule. Madam Speaker, of course, we have had discussions back and forth about how to implement the same, and it can only enable to enrich the conversation and ensure that what is brought forth on this floor is something that will be looking to ensure that it caters also for the interest of the Kenyan people in terms of representation. Madam Speaker, I'm also alive to the recommendations to extend the time for delimitation of boundaries. We all know that this was coming up and that the time was lapsing due to the issues at hand, and given the fact that we do not have an IBC, the IBC commissioners, I can see my colleague nodding in agreement. You can see that the report is really a consensus on all sides of the divide. Madam Speaker, it is important to note that the extension of time will allow for a proper review of the boundaries so that we can see whether this House can protect the constituencies that had been protected in the law that is lapsing. Madam Speaker, as I conclude, I also note that the Election Offences Amendment Bill is proposing to introduce an offense for any officer who conducts or holds an election in an ungazetted polling station or center. Madam Speaker, I wish to support the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Mombasa.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze kutoa sauti yangu katika ripoti hii ambayo imetolea uwiano. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza mimi nataka kupongeza, na nimeona wengi walitoa matakwa yao mengi sana kuhusu zile pesa ambazo zinafaa ziende katika wale MCS wetu, na ni dhahiri kuwa Mheshimiwa Spika, MCS wetu wamekuwa wakihangaika sana. Tunaona wengine wanapewa, wengine hawapewi. Kwa hiyo ikiwezwa kuwekwa katika sheria kuwa ma MCS waweze kupewa pesa za kufanya miradi kule mashinani, inaweza kusaidia sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Jambo lingine ambalo nimeliangalia Mheshimiwa Spika, sijui kama litapewa kipaumbele, japokuwa katika yale maamuzi ya mwisho sikuona Mheshimiwa Spika. Walemavu siku zote wao wameachwa nyuma Mheshimiwa Spika, na ingekuwa ni vizuri kama walemavu wangekuwa pia na mgao wao wenyewe ambao wanaweza wakajipangia mambo yao bila kushughulisha watu wengine tofauti. Mheshimiwa Spika, walemavu wanahangaika na mambo mengi sana katika taifa hili Mheshimiwa Spika, na wanahitaji usaidizi na huu usaidizi ikiwa kama waweza wakatengewa mgao wao kama walemavu, mgao wao kivyao, inaweza kusaidia sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo lingine ambalo nimeona limegusiwa, mambo ya IEBC. Na tuliona mambo yalivyokuwa katika uchaguzi uliopita Mheshimiwa Spika. Ilionekana wazi kuwa 4 imeshinda 3, wakati ambapo ilikuwa ni ngumu sana kuelewa Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo ikiwa kama mambo haya yanaweza kuangaliwa vizuri yakapigwa msasa, IEBC tujue hawa maafisa wa IEBC wanapewa uzito gani, ili tuweze kuelewa vizuri kuwa wale 4 wale 3 walipata ushindi mkubwa kwa sababu gani kuliko wale 4 Mheshimiwa Spika. Iweze kupigwa msasa mambo haya siweze kurejelewa Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo lingine ambalo limegusiwa, na mimi napenda kina mama bunge hili tuweze kusukuma kwa pamoja, na hata dada yetu waziri Mheshimiwa Aisha Jumwa aweze kusukuma haraka mambo ya two-thirds gender, ile ambayo ni thuluthi tatu kuangalia hali ya jinsia. Mheshimiwa Spika, kina mama tunahitaji nafasi za uongozi, nafasi za kutosha kama inavyoonyesha katika katiba Mheshimiwa Spika. Na ndio ningeweza kumuelezea waziri wetu Mama Aisha Jumwa aweze kuileta haraka ili ingizwe ndani, tuweze kuangalia mambo ya kina mama yanaangaliwa sawa sawa Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo lingine ambalo nimeangalia na napenda kusema, sisi kama viongozi kutoka Pwani tuliweza kulilia kamati hii kuangalia kuwa ile mipaka yetu ambayo inaweza kuingiliwa na wengine wa Garissa na sehemu zingine za Ukambani iweze kulindwa mipaka yetu ya Pwani Mheshimiwa Spika. Na naona imegusiwa hapo, natumai pia ripoti hii ikiweza kuchukuliwa kwa uzito, sehemu zetu za Pwani zitapata ulinzi na tutabaki na sehemu zetu Mheshimiwa Spika. Jambo lingine ambalo nimeliona pia tuliomba kama viongozi wa kutoka Pwani ni kuwa sisi katika zile constituencies zile zetu ambazo tunazo Mheshimiwa Spika zisiweze kupunguzwa. Manake kulikuwa na sintofahamu ama kulikuwa na tetesi kuwa tunaweza kupunguziwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, idadi yetu pia imeongezeka. Kwa hiyo sisi tunaomba badala ya kupunguza waweze kuongeza constituencies zingine katika sehemu zetu. Tutaweza kushukuru sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, wengi wamezungumza na kusema ni kwao, lakini mpaka sasa hali ya maisha, gharama ya maisha iko juu sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Tuweze kusisitiza sote ni wa Kenya, na hata tukizungumza sio kuwa tunachukiana, ni tunataka kuwa gharama ya maisha iweze kurudi chini, yule mwananchi ambaye ni mnyonge kule chini aweze naye kupata matakwa yake bila kuwa na uzito Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, unga hujashuka bei kama alivyosema mwenzangu, na tunaomba tuweze kusukuma wakulima. Na mimi naona katika mbolea waliuziwa Mheshimiwa Spika, mbolea ilikuja bure. Wakulima wapewe mbolea bure kwa sababu wanasema mazao yameongezeka. Wakipewa bure mazao yatazidi kuongezeka barabara Mheshimiwa Spika, na tutapata uchumi wetu unapanda juu vizuri Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo mimi napongeza ripoti hii. Naweza kuipongeza nikisema kama mama Mombasa, ni ripoti nzuri ambayo ikitiliwa maanani Kenya itasonga mbele kama Wakenya moja. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Mr. Speaker, this issue has various facets, but the first, which is of note, is the aspect that it increases the tax burden on Kenyans by a good 3%. And while most people are already familiar with the 3%, what they are not familiar with is the penalty that is also prescribed. That if you do not remit that 3% within 30 days, there's an additional penalty of another 3%. So that in any 1 month you are in danger of having to pay 6%, which can actually be recovered by court action. Secondly, and this bears repetition, it must be borne in mind that as national government is endeavoring to do all this, Schedule 4, Clause 18, and Schedule Part 1 and Part 2 makes it very clear that no matter how well-intentioned the government may be, housing still remains a county function, function. And the only thing given to national government is the policy. This bill is not prescribing policy, it's prescribing the way of doing it. That will remain unconstitutional no matter how you couch it. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, in terms of counties, this bill is very strange. It comes under the hand of the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, and it purports in the purposes that it has nothing to do with counties. And yet, first of all, in the very face of the bill, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the bill, clause 10(2)(c), clause 12(3)(b)(1), both of them actually expressly mention the county. Besides, in their rendering of explanation, we have been told that actually they are getting land that is right now held by the counties. You cannot get land from the counties and say the bill does not concern counties by definition and by law. It means by whatever formulation, the bill must also involve the Senate, and it must also involve discussion with the county governments. Mr. Speaker, the question of land is not clear. This bill proceeds as if these units will be built in the air. There is no attempt to talk about land acquisition at all. In fact, more importantly, under the Constitution, whether it's land held on behalf of the county or on behalf of the national government, it is only the National Land Commission that is authorized to allocate that land. The bill does not even recognize the National Land Commission, and I've seen the submission by the commission itself. It was persuading the committee to have provisions on the process of land acquisition. Otherwise, you end up putting public money in land that is not even owned by the public. Mr. Speaker, this bill in a very serious manner makes several aspects that are very unclear. First, in terms of ownership, it does not make it clear whether we are talking of affordable ownership of houses or affordable rental of houses. It is totally confused. And if you look at Section 10 and 37 as read together, it's only talking about then paying a percentage of whatever, 10% actually, of whatever is deemed to be the worth of the unit. It doesn't say whether it's 10% represent the purchase price or the rental price. This bill again, Mr. Speaker, in trying to talk of administration, it becomes very confusing. In Section 11, the money is supposed to be divided three ways. Part of it is divided to the National Housing Corporation, another part to the slum upgrading program, and to the State Department responsible for housing in Section 11. It then seeks to assume later in the bill that it is only the State Department and the board that is created that is administering the fund. The truth is, once you allocate land to the National Housing Corporation, to the slum upgrading fund, you have no means under the bill of then superintending it. It means that only 1/3 of the money allocated under this bill will be superintended by the board that is created. Mr. Speaker, in all fairness, the bill then does something very, very dangerous in Section 2A. And Mr. Speaker, we all know that the collector of taxes is the Kenya Revenue Authority. But this Section 2A then authorizes any other person appointed by the Cabinet Secretary for the time being responsible for National Treasury for the purposes of collection of funds under this Act. We are enabling an entity who is not even said to be a government entity to collect government taxes. We must be the only country that can do such a thing. And besides, you know that later on, 2% of the monies allocated are then allowed to be retained by this actor. Who is this person that we are giving the possibility of collecting monies that belong to Kenyans under this fund. Mr. Speaker, I wish to submit that however well-intentioned, this bill still requires a lot of proper analysis and engagement, not at the level of drafting, but at the idea level. It is still premature, it has not been well cooked, it is being rushed, it will end up being in problems. I so submit, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
I'll give Kimani, then we can call the mover to reply.